Hello and welcome to the Hawks Nest live stream show. My name, of course, is Brandon Kane, and I've got my man over here, Seahawks Brandon Nelson, back in the house here to help us preview one hell of a tough matchup we've got coming on deck. Our nemesis is coming on, rolling into town, feeling good about themselves. We ourselves, Brendan, not feeling great about ourselves, but we could come out of this game yet. Nonetheless, you still could come out of this game on top of this division, no matter what has happened walking into it. So we got to cover the game today, Brendan. I'm glad you're in the house again to back-to-back nights with me here. How you hold up, my man? How you feeling about this matchup as we are now inside 24 hours away?
I mean, we're always one game away from feeling really good about ourselves, right? We're always one game away from feeling really good about things, and let's hope we can get there.
Indeed. Let's hope indeed we can get there. And you're not going to be getting this Niner team like they looked a couple weeks ago, injured up or beaten up or battered down. They're relatively healthy for this time of year. They did lose ACL tear with Talafunga Hufunga, but they've had a guy in Jair Brown, a guy we both liked in the draft quite a bit out of Penn State, who's been able to fill in really well for them. So we're getting them full strength coming into town, Brendan. We're going to have to just straight up beat them. And this is a team that took us to school 3 times last year and pretty well kind of wasn't really even close games in any 3 of those. Before we get to this matchup, which could kind of instruct us on what happened, was there any kind of commonality to those 3 games from your perspective on why we lost those that stood out?
I mean, we played them 3 times last year, and I believe across those 3 games we forced 0 turnovers. Really hard to win games when that's happening. And I think we had turnovers in all of those games, at least 1, maybe 2 in each of those games. So when that happens, when you're not giving yourself an advantage in terms of how many possessions you get, and you're playing a team with this much talent, like this Niners team, it's in the conversation for most talented team in the league, and they have this coaching advantage. It's hard to find any place you can go to get it done.
Boy, it is the truth. And looking back at last year, on top of the turnovers, you really didn't control either line of scrimmage in any 3 of the other games. You didn't necessarily run well. You didn't necessarily pass particularly well. You got worse as the year went along in defending them in the run. By the playoff game, they really were able to just go hog wild on you. And so it is, as you say, a little bit of a tough of, okay, where's our anchor point here? Where do we begin from? So let's turn it into the offense first for the Niners that we're going to have to deal with. I don't know if they gave us the most troubles, but last year we scored a little bit in that 3rd game, and they gave us I think this is right now, even though the defense is still really good for the Niners, I still feel like right now the offense is kind of running a bit of the show. Do you think that's a fair characterization, or is this a pure 50-50 team by your outlook on it?
Well, what I would say is that if there's an issue with this Niners team right now, it's on that offensive line, because both their guards have a good chance of missing this game. In fact, I think they've already said that Banks is not going to play. So they've got some issues on that offensive line. They've got Trent Williams, and he's really good. And then after that, there's just a free fall to who would even be their second best offensive lineman. I don't know. Like, none of those guys really look all that good to me. Maybe Jake Brendel, I guess. Like, that's the best I can do. It's not a very good group. And now they're missing their 2 guards in all likelihood, because Burford is supposed to, 50-50. So I will say, if there's an issue with this Niners team right now, it would be on that offensive line. But the thing is, I still think I agree, because that's the side of the ball that Shanahan really impacts the game the most, the offense. The defense, you can at least look at and say, well, they're not doing very well with Steve Wilkes, I think his name is. Like, he hasn't done a very good job for them. It's been a little bit of a struggle. They haven't played great defensively because of that. So, yeah, I think I would agree. The offense, even with that issue on the offensive line, is still probably better off.
Yeah, I still think that's a very good point on regards to the offensive line, and would agree with you. They definitely have some weaknesses in there. Shanahan schemes so much up in a lot of the quick passing game, especially to mitigate some of those issues up front. But it is maybe the place that we have a little bit of a slight advantage, where there does not necessarily appear to be one anywhere else. And when you do start with this Niner offense, it came together to turn itself into what would be very close to a juggernaut-like side of the ball last year on the back of the Christian McCaffrey trade. he seems to and continues to be the heartbeat of this offense that has so many dangerous parts to it. He is the guy at the centerpiece that they really do lean on above all else.
Yeah, he's been fantastic for them this year. I think they've probably been feeding him a little too much, maybe you could say.
Yeah.
I think they've probably been overworking him just a little bit, but he's been great. Against all odds, really, he's stayed relatively healthy. I think he missed one game this year. He didn't miss any time last year. So, yeah, he's been great for them, obviously. And really, when you look at this Niners team, it kind of feels like it's the Rams, but with way more talent, right? Like
Mhm.
they've actually got a top running back. They've actually got a top tight end. They've actually got top receivers. So when you look at what happened against the Rams on Sunday, where there were some positive things, but you still melted down in the fourth quarter, it's hard to imagine anything good happening because it's just the same type of thing, just with a much better array of talent.
Yeah, it is. I think it's a good way of putting it on it. Both of these teams do run between Rams and 49ers their own separate style of West Coast offense, but there are a lot of mirroring images of each other in what they're trying to basically accomplish, even if they slightly go by it just a little bit of a different method to their approach and their attack. And they are so hard to defend, like you said, because they have so many weapons. Yeah, McCaffrey, as you all said, he's on pace for 300 carries this year. It's probably a guy that they are leaning on a little bit too much at this point, but nonetheless, they can always dial it up anytime they want to go to Kittle or work in a fly sweep to Debo Samuel, who still remained really good with that. And then you have Brandon Ayuk, who has really ascended on the outside as a receiver. He's averaging almost 20 yards a catch this year, Brendan, for a guy that who was coming out was looked at as really more of a just intermediary kind of receiver. That's how he was going to hit you. A Keenan Allen type was the way that he was going to get it done. But he
Yeah.
is really having a hell of a year here in his contract season.
Yeah, it's really tough to find weaknesses, and Ayuk was a guy who I was never super high on until this season. And this season, it seems like he's really put it together more so than previous years. And again, I'm just trying to find the area in which we can take advantage here. Like we have great corners, right?
Mhm.
The corners probably the best thing we have going for us on this team, honestly. Like Trey Brown's included in that too,
Yeah.
but I can't say we're going to be able to dominate the matchups against these receivers. Like it's a great test. Like Woolen and Witherspoon and Brown are going to be put to the test like crazy in this game, and it's going to be interesting to watch for sure. But that's not a matchup that I look at and go, yeah, we're going to win that matchup. That's kind of what I'm hung up on here.
I think we have the capability to win it, but I'm not sure we're, like you say, going to win it because we won't necessarily, I think, do what you're going to have to do to take this offense down. When it comes to playing Brock Purdy, it's pretty well understood at this point that if you drop into soft zones, he can pick you apart. A zone-based defense is going to be into his strength if that's what you're going to run. You have these guys, as you and I've talked about many times over, who are on the outside, can play man, they can play press, they can stay glued up to their receiver. Even these guys that are these good of receivers, they're going to win their share. We're going to win our share, but you can at least be competent in your ability to hold up on the outside. But it does then require the coaching staff a willingness to then play man. And when you go back to the stretch of this season where the Niners lost three in a row, and you look at the Browns matchup and the Bengals matchup, and you're seeing how much of what they're doing at that point is playing man on the outside, is trying to condense things for Brock Purdy down round inside the box in between those hash marks and it affecting Brock Purdy, the man coverage. It really
Mhm.
seems like if I'm looking for a clear approach for a way to take this offense down, doesn't guarantee you're going to take it down, but for a method that would be a sound of application for what we've learned about Brock Purdy up until this point, going more in that direction seems like, really the strategy to try to take hold of as much as absolutely as possible.
Yeah, I mean, you think about that Rams game. Cooper Cup goes out, so you're playing a receiver core with Puka, who's good. Puka's good. Tutu Atwell, who's whatever, kind of jaggy.
Mhm.
And who else do they have at receiver? Skoronek?
Skowronek.
Skoronek. Yeah, it's like if you weren't able to man up and play aggressively against those receivers, how are you going to do it against these receivers? Like for you to not realize that's obviously the right play against that receiver core, I'm looking at this receiver core and I'm like, how are you going to realize it here? Because one element at play here that I think some people are going to fall back on is that initially Carroll had a lot of success against Shanahan's offense, right?
Mhm.
For those first several years Shanahan got to San Fran, our defense actually played his offense fairly well. Now, some of it was because they had lackluster quarterbacks, I think. I think that Purdy has proven he's at least better than Garoppolo, personally. I think that
Agreed.
he's at least a little bit better. But I mean, I think one thing that would be interesting is to talk about why the old Carroll defense matched up well with the Niners offense and whether or not we're going to be able to emulate that success again in this matchup.
Yeah, I've always come back to the 4-3, and especially the 4-3 under with the Sam linebacker as a de facto the fifth guy on the line of scrimmage, and what that then did to because what the Niners are going to do is and a key difference between them and the Rams, for instance, is they're not going to necessarily lean on relying upon three wide receiver sets to sort of carry the day all the time. They'll run a good amount of that stuff, but they'll also draw into base situations where you have Kyle Juszczyk on the field, I formation looks, these type of things. And when you do that, then that opens the door for you to counter defensively with a 4 down lineman and that Sam, because we ran the 4-3 under a lot, right, Brendan? But we often didn't get to run it because the majority of the time, the defenses that you face or offenses you're going to face are going to run 3 wide receiver. So they're going to be that in 67, 68% of the time. When they're in passing plays like that, they're going to be in those kind of formations. And so then you're just not able to call upon that Sam on the ball, or like what Bruce Irvin was when we moved him off of defensive end out to Sam early on in his career. And what it does to give you now where you elongate out that defensive lineman with the fifth guy down in the line of scrimmage. And what did the Niners like to do really a lot? Work that outside game. This is where them and the Rams have a lot of resemblance, where they want to get wide. They want to get horizontal on you. But now you're really requiring them to get extra horizontal because you're spacing those guys out, and the gap control is better now because you have one extra guy for one extra gap, essentially. On top of the fact, Brendan, you end up with, when you have a guy who would be like, let's say, a Darrell Taylor or a Bruce Irvin, they're down there now heads up over a tight end. And now Juszczyk isn't taking on a linebacker in his blocking assignment. He's getting a D end, and now you have a better chance of defeating that block. But I don't think that they're going to go to that old school style, though I would say it would be a cool little wrinkle to bring in this week. And if you were bringing in strategy, you might try to employ something like that. But I think that's why we had a lot of the success we did, because then we could shut down Shanahan's rushing offense, turn his offense into one-dimensional. It's not built to be pass happy, really. It's always meant to have you sort of having to pay attention to the run a bit, always taking that false step one way or moving in a direction you shouldn't. And that's removed if you have to be having just start to sling the rock all over the football field. On top of, they don't have the offensive line to pass protect like that.
Right. And obviously the Seahawks defense has been really kind of weird this year. It's like part 3-4, part 4-3, but it's not really either of those things. It's like 4-man fronts, but it's really a 2-man front. It's just a weird one. I don't really know exactly I don't know if other teams are playing defense like that. Like, I don't see other teams line up with 2-man fronts and then the edge rushers lined up on the line of scrimmage that often. It's very weird. It's very different. I don't know if we're going to see the same effect.
The results haven't been there to make a lot of sense why you're doing it. You're not better as a pass rushing unit. You don't stop the run better since you've made the change. I really don't understand what the benefit is going to it. I do see it occasionally out there, but we run it 24/7. And it was supposed to be, remember, Brendan, that we're going 3-4, and then you mix in a little bit of these fronts. Not that you completely bail on the 3-4, and then this is the front you're running 24/7. Why not just stay with the 4-3 at that point, in my opinion? But that's, kind of already out the door. It is what it is on that one.
Yeah, and my other issue is that if the weakness of this team is the interior offensive line, or really basically everything on the offensive line that isn't Trent Williams, I'd feel better about that if we had better depth on the defensive line to take advantage. We really don't. In fact, we've really kind of gotten to a point now where Williams, Reed play almost all the snaps on the defensive line because Draymond's basically playing edge way more than anything else now.
Mm.
And then Mario Edwards comes in when one of those guys is too exhausted to keep playing. So
right.
I don't even know if our defensive line, which I mean, this is really bad because we made a big trade trying to improve our defensive line. And while it did get better, I don't know if we have the depth to really take advantage of this Niners front that seems like could be taken advantage of.
Yeah, I agree with you because as you mentioned with Draymond, he's out there. Why? Because it's just for the better of him. I mean, it's good to mix him out there a little bit early on. I liked some of that, but having him out there as his main duties now, as he's an outside guy, you're removing him from the inside and his impact in there and the rotation in there at that point. And you're doing this not because merely he's just so good on the edge. It's because of Frank Clark's and Daryl Taylor's inadequacies that draw you there to do it.
Right.
And so it's you, gluing up one hole that causes something else to stretch out and open up on the other side. And it is starting to look a little bit like that, where it's kind of trying to hold together here rather than being a real strong unit.
Right. So I'm just trying to find it. And another thing that I noticed when I was looking at some of the data behind that Rams game really does kind of sort of seem like the coaching staff is regressing in their understanding of how to deploy Bobby Wagner. Like he got lit up in coverage in this last
Mhm.
game, a lot of it down the field. So that tells me we're putting him in those bad situations that he does not need to be put in. And that worries me in a game like this. It could get really bad in a game like this if you continue to do that.
And they're not always pure flood zone concepts, but they're just the most basic of concepts. I watched him attack it with Bobby last week. There was an Atwell play where he got a big completion down near to the end zone. And I always present this to you, Brendan. You're an offensive minded coach, and you know that the corners are going to drop off into off coverage, cover three. And if you take your guy from one side of the field and run a long crosser across the field, he's going to run through the linebacker zone, and linebacker is going to probably have to pick him up. And because both outside corners are dropping to cover three depth, they're gone. If you run the receivers on the outside off on a 9 route, the other receiver off on a 9 route, sorry, on the right side, while the crossing guy's coming over. Now you have Bobby trying to hold up on a 4-3-2 40 to Atwell, and he can't run step for step with him. And that's not even as much as Bobby being slow. It's just that think about the mechanics of that. I, as an offensive coordinator, can predict you're going to drop into that coverage. What are you telling think of it even from Hurt's standpoint, Brendan. What does he tell Bobby or any of the people there? Because remember, the whole part this starts with, if we unwind it to the beginning of the play, is the cover three aspect, is the corners and off coverage, dropping to depth. Why are they dropping to depth? Why are they staying so deep? Because he wants to prevent the deep ball, even at the cost of Bobby Wagner getting smoked underneath by Tutu Atwell for what ends up being probably a 20-yard gain. And so the thing I always say is the great irony about this defense is that in its protectivism nature, it's supposed to be preventing the big plays, and yet it causes big plays all over the place on a weekly basis. It may not be 9 routes over the top, Brendan, but it still all boils down to the same kind of yardage when you really break it down.
Yeah, so looking at stuff like that, I feel like things are regressing and it makes it really hard to just feel good about a game like this because again, this is another team. If you do that stupid stuff, they take advantage really well. So, I'm just trying to dissect this one, trying to understand it. And like I'm looking at it from that angle. I'm like, are we going to have Bobby in coverage down the field on Debo and Ayuk and Kittle? Like we know how that story's going to end.
Yeah, we do. And I watched Shanahan. He's getting better at this. That's why you went 0-3 last year. It's why it's different from what it was when he walked in the door against Carroll initially. You've got to remember with Shanahan that he has a keen understanding of what to do against this defense because he kind of was one of the original breaker of the backs of this defense when he was the offensive coordinator on the Atlanta Falcons. And he basically solved Dan Quinn at the time was the defensive coordinator running Coach Carroll's pure cover three scheme at the time. And in practicing day after day after day, he figured out the plays that were going to work against this defense and that it didn't have any counter to. And he's been able to just, even last year to me, Brendan, he's even kind of gone ahead of McVay and McVay's ability to attack it. And just he will do some of the just most nastiest, simplest stuff. He'll be in an I formation look and he'll draw the 2 receivers to this side of the field. And then you don't move your corner to the other side of the field. So you keep him over there, right? So now we're left with our strong safety over the top, our outside corner on the other receiver. But our safety over the top is in 15 yards off ball. So now the outside receiver here runs the 9 route over the top. This safety over the top has to react to a guy who's going to have 10 yards of full buildup speed in order to what to do. And he just runs a simple out route, which the safety has to always be remembering at that point to keep himself clean over the top. And he's guarding a receiver, which is a mismatch in itself. Shanahan knows that safety is going to give up that out route on that play, or an in cutting route for that matter, or a stop route, whatever he wants to dial up of those 3 in that moment, he can, because he knows the safety's rallying late. And the safety always has to be aware about the mantra of don't get beat deep. And that's where we get to that spot of there's so many of when I watched the tape last year and have reviewed it even recently, there's so many on the all 22 offensive plays from last season that are just easy money for Shanahan. It's him scheming it up. It isn't the player beating some guy one-on-one going up the field in coverage. It's literally that he finds the opening hole in the zone and it's wide open and it's there whenever he wants to go to it. That's the adjustment today in this game. You play more man, you play tighter, you tighten up the zones down underneath, you risk a little bit of stuff going deep, Brendan, because the one place Purdy can't get you, the one place that even Niner fans will acknowledge, he does not have the arm strength. And if he beats me deep over the top by throwing 3 or 4 9 routes this game, I feel like this is what we said last year in the playoffs, but I'm saying it again. If Brock Purdy beats me with 3, 4, 9 routes over the top to Brandon Ayuk or Deebo Samuel over the course of the game, if he's going to be able to beat Tariq Woolen into the 4.26 speed on the outside, or Devin Witherspoon's probably a 4.3 guy, so be it. I will have been like, okay, at least you tried a different strategy. You tried to take it to him. You tried aggressiveness. You tried to go take the game, and it didn't work. And you pushed him into what is his limitations. Rather than letting Purdy lean to what is his strengths, you went away and pushed him into his limitations, and he was still able to succeed. Purdy's a hero. Good for him at that point. But I'd really like to see something like that employed if we can to give this defense a chance rather than the soft death of 10,000 paper cuts.
Yeah, and it again, I mean, we say these things a lot on this show, it feels like. We say these things a lot. I mean, obviously, it's exacerbated when you're playing a team like the Niners because their strengths and weaknesses are so obvious,
Mm-hmm.
but it just feels like it's never really going to happen the way we need it to. Like this might be a game where you almost never run zone. Like honestly, if you want to have a chance, this might be you might have to do what the Browns did when they played the Niners. They stayed in man, what was it, 75% of the time in that game or something like that.
Something
So
like that.
that that might be what it takes, but are you willing to do that? It feels like the answer is no. So I mean, I can sit here and say I think that would work pretty well, and I do. You have the corners to do it. I think you have corners better than what the Browns had in that game.
Mm-hmm.
Browns have good corners, but we have maybe the best corners in the league. But it's just really hard to have confidence that they're going to utilize it in the right way.
They refuse to cross the bridge on the weekly basis. You got Coach Carroll and company come up to the bridge, and there's a little 2 cliff edges between each other. And you can cross the bridge, or you can go all the way down to the lowlands. You got to cross a river down there. You'll probably have to get through a few different villages that are kind of hostile, and then you get right back over to here, which you can get in 15 paces if you just go right across the bridge. And they're like, nope, don't want to take the bridge. And if I'm proven wrong on this, then I'll be proven wrong. If we ever reach a point where we actually get to see them and it fails, I'll own and be like, well, I guess we were wrong to even think they could try that strategy. But they've got the personnel to do it. And as you just said, they won't do it. And I kind of come again back around to the same thought process coming into this game of I did when I was telling you this last year when we were prepping for the playoff game against the 49ers on the road. And I'll say the same words now that I said then. What do you got to lose? On paper, by the way this season is played out, you have no business going into these next 4 games believing that you should be able to stand with these 4 teams by how you played up until this point. Now, you're capable of playing better. You got more talent to play better. But why go and lose by the same sort of methodology you've been losing the season in recent years? Why not instead try just something different along the path when you are so much the underdog? It's one thing if you're coming in as the favorite and we just play our game and we'll get the win. But it's another thing when you come in as what should be somewhat of a heavy underdog considering where we've been this year. Not that we've been a bad team, but these are teams that are the cream of the crop in the NFC so far this year. And so I come back to that, Brendan, and say, what is the failure if you try? If you try in this game as Coach Carroll and you blitz like hell and you play man coverage like hell and it gets slaughtered, I'm not going to be here dragging them. Not a lot of people are going to be like, finally, we got to see a little bit of aggression. And I bet there's going to be some good things that happen on the other side of it too, like interceptions and fumbles and whatnot like that. But you're right. Your bottom line point's right. We haven't seen it up until this point. We've been asking for it, but it is probably a struggle to believe that they're necessarily going to start to employ this strategy now when they've been so hesitant to do so in the past.
Right. So I mean, I don't think there's too much else to say other than that. I mean, we could at the very least play well if we just did these things, but we have to actually do those things. Not we have the ability to do it, but we're going to not do it and just it's almost like, against the Rams, I could understand to a certain extent, even though I really don't agree with it, going into that game thinking we're going to let our talent just carry us because we have better talent than they do. We do.
Mhm.
We have more
Yeah.
talent than the Rams, but you don't have more talent than the Niners. The Niners might have the most talent in the league. So you thinking that your talent is just going to carry you to a win without you doing anything exotic, that's definitely not the case here.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's time to get creative in your approach a little bit. And you're in the recent weeks, Brendan, if anything, from how we started this year, where we're running at our hottest defensively, we've dialed back the blitzes. We've gotten more conservative. It's just more illustration, or it should be, to the coaching staff that being conservative, being protective in our whole nature and our approach to the defensive side of the ball is not bringing the returns. And I see people get caught up in some of these little changes on, well, we run the bear front with an overman on the nose tackle, and the defense is the same. You can talk about that. We can get into the semantics of, this and that little thing here that changed by the alignment of a nose tackle. But at the end of the day, the defense is still operating the same way it's all really operated. And I do come to wonder, is at what point does Carroll I'd love to ask him, if you don't want to do it now, Coach Carroll, how long would it take of you to have these results for? Would you always just think it's talent that you'd go to? If you were 2027 and we're 4 years later of your defense being in a middling state, would you still be like, well, we just can't quite land the right talent? The scheme was working perfectly fine. No, it's all good. It's just a matter of the talent's a little bit light. At what point would you arrive as a coach and saying, you know what? It is not, I got to do something different here. This has been years of this not going. I keep holding on to this old thing it's not working. I mean, he's not a bad coach. It's just this defensive approach, Brendan, is not, it's not working for me.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of reminds me of when Mike D'Antoni was coaching the Lakers about 10 years ago. And Mike D'Antoni has a certain way he wants to coach basketball, a certain way he wants to do things. And the Lakers roster at that time was the exact opposite of what Mike D'Antoni wanted to do. It was old, slow players who were big. Mike D'Antoni wants to be small and fast and quick. So what does he do? He starts benching all of his good players and putting in bad ones who fit his style, like Pau Gasol, who was at that point one of the best players in the league still. Pau Gasol started getting benched for like Earl Clark because Earl Clark can shoot threes, right? And it's just like, okay, at a certain point, if you're a good coach, isn't your job to coach the talent you have, not the talent you want? And of course, that Lakers team was terrible. They underachieved. D'Antoni never had any success with them. It's like, if you're a good coach, shouldn't you be able to adjust to what you have rather than what you want to have?
Brother, I would think that they would. The weird thing about this too is that they've taken certain steps from a personnel standpoint to show you that they're leaning in this direction. Right? Devin Witherspoon's ability to play in man was a big part of, okay, if we're going to draft him, you want him to play a lot of man because that's what he does at his best in college. Not that he can't play zone, but he's a man-based guy. That's how you want to use him. Bobby, last year, career high in sacks in a season. Use him as a blitzer. Get him up there around the box like the Rams did. Don't put him back into coverage. Jamal Adams back in the frame here. And they're sending Jamal a little bit when he's out there, not like a lot. And so you've brought the personnel that can seemingly do it, but then you're still not really deciding. Even Jordan Brooks has been a great blitzer this year when you've sent him. Great.
Yeah.
Another guy like Bobby, you want to do everything you can to remove him out of coverage, even more so than Bobby, quite frankly. And yet, as we've gone in recent games, you don't want to dial those blitzes up. You don't want to bring those guys. You do it successfully. You've taken seemingly the approach that you understand. You need to take these steps to start to do this with your defense. But we always end up kind of sliding back into a little bit of that, it's a bit of like what you talked about on the offense where, that whole thing of you start out creative offensively with Waldron and he's doing all this stuff that we think his offense would encompass. And then suddenly he stops and it all becomes this like different offense halfway into the game, as though Coach Carroll has said, okay, you've done all that creative stuff that's really risky. Now just get real vanilla with it. Let's just hold on for the end of the game. Let's just hold on. Let's just ride this through now without doing too much super weird stuff. Just keep it in this box now a little bit. It's how it is. It feels like offensively and defensively, we're just in a little bit of a box, and we need to start thinking outside the box.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. My optimism is pretty low right now when it comes to this stuff because I don't know how else I can feel coming off that game on Sunday where you just saw like this perfect distillation of everything that we talk about in one game. All this negative stuff that worries us about the long-term future of this team. And it just, a game like that makes you feel like it's never going to get better.
It doesn't. And it especially when you have things this year where it's one thing when you have the unknown of what it would happen if you did blitz, but we have these moments this year that stand out so very clear in our minds. You know, like we talked on the last stream about it, so I won't belabor it, but the Lions game with Trey Brown blitzing and then coming back with the interception after the blitz, the Browns game with Jamal Adams blitzing on the game-changing play. Many of the times this year throughout these games, the best stuff you've done defensively, it's been on the back of a blitz. Even this last week, the best stuff you did was on the back of when you blitzed. You got a sack with Devin Witherspoon. You got an interception down there with Tariq Woolen. You had another play where Julian Love almost got a sack as well. Stafford just got away and threw it out of bounds. You do it well, but the team runs from it. And I think it just goes against the pure DNA of Coach Carroll. He just does not want to risk that back end. The thing that would grind him worst would be to see a 60-yard completion over the top on a 9 route. Like that would just, I think that would absolutely send him into, that's the only thing I can derive from this, because otherwise, why the hesitancy to lean into it when you do it so well? Corsos D Gutierrez, thank you for the $2 donation. Says, hey guys, I believe truly we can win if we beat. What is he saying?
I have no idea. I'm guessing something about penalties because yellow.
Oh, if we can beat the Flags. Yeah, you certainly aren't going to be able to beat this Niner team if the officials are giving them the old plus 10% yellow bump. That's for sure, Kosos. We need this to be an evenly officiated game just to have even a chance on this one. But we'll see. It's been a rough ride so far this year with the penalties.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's the least of my concerns right now. Honestly, I want to see this team actually play well enough to have a chance to win first. But yeah, sure.
Yeah, I'm really at this point just hoping to start seeing turns of strategy that we can start to push forward into the future for this team, not just this year, but into the future, especially with Coach Carroll here at the helm. And that's going to be really where my honest kind of view is on this team as we go forward through the rest of this year. Not giving up, and I hope we can pull this out. And we got a chance as much as anything. It's just putting the players in the right positions to succeed. Really coming to this game is what stands out to me as much as anything else. Doesn't guarantee a win, but it gives us so much of a better chance of getting there.
Right.
Thank you, Corsos. Appreciate you for that. Cast JJ99. Thank you for the $2 donation. Browns were able to play man because CMC went down. Well,
I mean,
I think
they'll did he go in?
It's Cleveland.
Okay.
Yeah, there were some bad things that went down in that Browns game too. In addition to that, cast they lost Deebo Samuel and Trent Williams really early in that game too. So there were 3 different injuries that occurred across the board. It's my understanding though that the Browns run a pretty heavy amount of man defense anyway. That they trust their guys on the outside a lot of the time to roll like that. But you know, I don't know if, because I'm trying to figure out how man. I guess I'm just trying to figure out how it affects CMC going down, why that would affect you, whether or not you play man or not.
I mean, bottom line is CMC or no CMC, it's something that needs to be done because what we're doing doesn't work that well. Like, even if CMC's there, you still got to do it. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And at the very least, you tried to do something that has a chance of working, right? Like,
that's my place with the cast. I just think that it's not to say that what our strategy here is a guaranteed success, that this is just the coaching staff leaving easy money on the ground, but it's just a strategy that they have yet to employ. For instance, to illustrate this point, can any of you guys in the chat, can any of you think of one play this year where we got beat over the top on a 9 route where we blitzed, where we had to pay the price for that 6-man blitz that we sent and the quarterback hammered that 9 route over the top and a big play happened and we got beat? I can't think of one play. We're 10 games here into the season. Not one play. Not one. And it does, that's that protective nature thing. And so you might still get hit. You might still get dinged. You might still get cut up in different ways, but it's at least a different style of fashion rather than the same fashion you're getting cut up in by these offenses at times throughout recent weeks.
Yeah.
Thank you for the dono. Appreciate you, Cast. Let's turn it over here to the defensive side of things. or offensive side of things, I should say here, with Geno Smith and the boys. It does look like Geno's going to play Brendan.
Yeah.
Does look like we're going to get some Rocky McIntosh or some Rocky McIntosh, some Kenny McIntosh. So maybe we'll get a little bit of the Swiss Army knife running back being unveiled this week. Maybe they got a plan in place to use him a bit.
Yeah, it's going to take some creativity that we haven't seen much of this year, though.
That's another thing. It's both sides of the ball we end up saying it with.
Yeah.
What is your method? Sorry, go ahead.
Like, try to give McIntosh the ball up A gap and B gap and see what happens. Like seriously, I dare you. I dare you.
They will, Brendan. They will. I mean, that's what they'll give it a good, honest try if he goes out there. I guarantee you, the first run he gets is not going to be a pitch play. Let's just say that. How do we take down the Niners defense? It's a little bit of a different. They're a tough matchup, but this is a little bit of a different type of matchup than the one we've played in recent weeks, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say so. This defense is crazy talented. They've got talent all over the place. That defensive line is stacked. Linebacker core, probably the best linebackers in the league. They go 3 deep with credible guys. Warner, Greenlaw, and I forget the name of the third guy.
Burks?
Yeah, Burks. Thank you. Even their secondary, which that's supposedly the weakness of this Niners defense, right? You can attack their secondary a little bit. Ward commits a lot of penalties. Their cornerback 2 spot, even that hasn't really been that bad. Mm-hmm. So the talent is there. The question is the coaching from Wilks. And I get the sense that the Niners this year, one reason why you make the Chase Young trade is you're trying to overwhelm his lackluster coaching with as much talent as possible. You're trying to give him so much to work with, even he can't mess it up. But it is a defense that is more likely to play you straight up. I guess that would be a key difference. They're more likely going to try to get pressure with 4, drop their guys into coverage, and just kind of they're not going to throw anything crazy exotic at you. Like these last few teams we played have done a lot of stacked fronts. Ravens did it. Commanders did it. Rams did it. I don't know if the Niners are going to go to that because in their mind, they probably don't need to. So that would be one significant difference.
Yeah. I mean, that's the main one I was going for there. You touched on at the end. It was just that they are a front 4 unit that will trust that front 4. And why not? You have Hargrave, you brought in this offseason at $20 million, who's been a very good pass rusher for them as they hoped he would be. Bosa's having a good year after signing his deal. Eric Armstead remains a very solid, if not a flashy player, but just a very, very solid player on the inside. And then you do add Chase Young into the mix on this as well, which makes them, really, really tough to deal with, up front. So that's maybe a place where, maybe Geno in certain ways is breathing a bit of a sigh of relief from all the stack fronts and how many blitzes and all that stuff that's given them so much trouble in recent weeks. But how do you then, understanding that they're going to drop all these guys into coverage, 4-man fronts, what's the method to go after, in your opinion, this Niners defense?
Well, I do think that, by the way, Ken Walker, forget about it. He's technically listed as doubtful.
Yeah,
but
he won't play.
He's not playing. And
No,
I'm honestly shocked we even listed him as doubtful at all.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't think we're going to have him. So I do think that you're going to need to pass the ball. I don't think you're going to be able to run the ball and protect it and baby the offense and get anywhere. But I want to see some play action. I want to see us get back to that stuff, which has been strangely absent this year. Really low on play action stuff so far this season.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to get back to that. I think that's going to help make those linebackers take those false steps, make those safeties maybe take those false steps. That's how you got that one touchdown you got against the Rams. Play action, forced safety to take a false step. DK gets open, touchdown. And for some reason, you don't really go back to play action very much the whole rest of the game. It confounds us all. And generally speaking, even though we're playing a team that is going to do things differently, I still want to see some of the same stuff, right? I want to see more tight end stuff. I want to see some of the pistol formation stuff. Some of the stuff that seems like free yards, free completions, hit the tight end in the flat. These things can work against any defense. However, given the fact that the Niners are unlikely to be sending a lot of blitzes at you, I would say I think that does give you a little bit of a better chance to just win straight up. Like one thing I do want to unironically shout out here is that Charles Cross has looked really good the last 2 games. He's
Mhm.
played 2 really good games in a row. So if you're just asking him to go one-on-one with Chase Young a lot in this game, that might be something that he can handle because he's taking care
You
of
mean
it pretty
Bosa.
well lately. Well, wouldn't Cross be on the left side, which is where Young's going to come from? Isn't Bosa on the other side?
Bosa's on the blind side. He's their blind side rusher.
Okay. I must have gotten that mixed up. Okay. Like Bosa, that might be something that he can handle.
Mhm.
Obviously, I wish we had Lucas. Wish we had Lucas to handle the other side. We don't. So we're going to need 41-year-old Jason Peters to hold up. But I would rather deal with this than deal with a team that blitzes like crazy like the Ravens do. I do think we're going to be able to do a little bit better here than we did against some of those other teams. Do I think we're going to have great results? Not necessarily, but I could see it at the very least. At the very least, I feel like we have a chance here, a chance that we didn't really have against a team like the Ravens that just sent blitzes that we didn't know how to deal with.
Yeah, we certainly haven't found a solution for those blitzes, and the Rams were employing it too, even much more than I think they did in their first matchup, and we just seem to be completely flummoxed by it. So at least with this, it's clear of, when you want to bring your chip blocks up or your double team helps with the tight ends, you're going to be pretty well easy. You're going to know how to get those sunk in for the most part. Niners do run a lot of stunts and stuff that can throw that stuff off a little bit, but nonetheless, it's a little easier, I think, from the pass protection issues we've had off the back of those stack fronts to have some success. I'd love to see too a place they've had a struggle in attacking this wide nine defense is getting after that wide nine and that lineman I've called for this many years is I think you are going to see a lot of A and B gap runs, unfortunately, in this game at times, Brendan, because Coach Carroll and the offensive coordinator are going to see those that of course with the four man front and a wide nine, everything aligns out really wide, so where typically you'd have in our old 4-man defense, 4 down late defense, you'd have a Leo who'd be a wide nine guy in a wide nine technique on the blind side. You got both guys in a wide nine on either side with their hands in the dirt. And then you take your defensive tackles and sort of spread them out a little bit further too as well. Now, this gives those guys a lot of room to go and make pass rush moves and be difficult to deal with in space because linemen have to move a little bit more laterally to stay with them. But you also have natural gaps that are now opened up with this kind of wide nine defense alignment that if you can take advantage of those, it's hard, it's easier said than done, but they do exist prior to the snap there. If you're looking for a way to maybe attack in the ground game. And I'd love to see them just stick with their ground game in general in this game in the hopes of trying to do better in controlling the clock. Don't go away from it as they have at times, Brendan, but seek to try to take advantage of some of those gap alignments, especially if you're catching the Niners at times trying to get uphill, trying to get up the field. In Chase Young's case at Washington, that was the big thing with him, Brendan, was that he was taking snaps off and he's trying to earn that contract. He's trying to get sacks, hits. He wants to get paid. So he's maybe not as worried about what's going on in the ground game and that you can maybe take advantage of some of that aggressiveness. But
Yeah.
the one other thing I'd like to see with it too is just some sluggo routes. We've not run, I don't think, one sluggo all season long. And these corners play really aggressively and they will bite to that first move. You go to the out route, they'll bite to the out route. And in Lockett and DK's case, you have two guys that can run really good sluggo routes. If I was Waldron, I'd dial a couple in this game to test both the safety on the back end, rookie Jair Brown, who might find himself in single high situations at times, but also those corners for how aggressive they can get. And it's a hard play to do because you got to do that whole pump, and the offensive line has to hold on long enough for the whole play to kind of develop. But we've not another one of those plays we haven't run once this year.
Yeah, I'd love to see stuff like that too. I think that there's a again, it's these things that make so much sense. Like I said a couple weeks ago, I feel like if you ran that comebacker with DK 20 times in a game,
Mm-hmm.
he'd catch it 18, 19 times. I don't
Yeah.
know how you stop it. It's so hard to deal with because he's fast and big, and like there's not much you can do as a defender. But we don't do it nearly as often as we should. It's like, imagine if the Eagles decided they were going to stop running the tush push because it worked too well and they thought it was unfair. That's almost
Yeah.
what it's like.
Well, it's we're talking about a lot of parts of this team that are like that, right? It's like the use of the blitz game. We're so good at blitzing, but yet we don't go back to it. We just sort of forget that we have it to utilize. It's like it's
Mhm,
almost like, well, we can't we're way too dominant with this. We've got to go back and even this
mhm,
up. I don't get it either.
right. Mhm.
Sorry,
All
were you gonna say
right.
something? Sorry.
No. I can't think of any other real angle to go with this defense. It's talented. It's got some limitations by coaching, but on the whole, it's a lot to deal with.
Yeah, it definitely is. And that kid Jair Brown's playing pretty good for them, filling in for last week. I think he got a pick. And he's playing good football for them the back end. So though it's a place we might be able to attack a little bit, maybe with some aggressiveness, maybe trick him on some things where Rook isn't ready for some stuff. Nonetheless, there's just no holes really to be found in this defense. They tackle really well. They don't tend to give up a lot of big plays. They're going to make you tend to kind of earn it. But I like your idea with the tight ends and
Hmm.
working those in, especially from the ground game, just short, easy passes. Sometimes just taking the 3 and the 4 yard gain to the tight end and just try to maybe pepper to them a little bit too in this game, leading into your efficiency in 2 and 3 tight end sets. Daniel Bailey, thank you for the $5 donation. The solution is getting Pete some therapy. Word is that he was bullied by a deep ball growing up, was traumatized, and swore he wouldn't get beat again. That would at least explain it. The boy went by the name Deep Ball. That's what happened, man. He had a bully in his youth named Deep Ball. Was the worst. Used to take my lunch money every day,
Hmm.
Brendan.
Yeah, I mean, it's as good an explanation as any, I guess. It's as good an explanation as any.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I just don't get why he gets as worried as he does about it, considering the fact that it is, again, I can find a good 4 or 5 chunk plays in the air against you giving up in that game. You're not stopping it. And maybe it's a lot of it's happening after yak. Maybe it's a lot of it's happening because of a busted coverage, but it's still happening nonetheless. Versus you trying to draw this coverage always into the depth. And I just go, man, if it's not preventing what you're trying to prevent anyway, what's the worry with going against that, trying some other things that don't go in that direction in your coverages from time to time?
Right. I don't have any way to explain it other than he's been doing it this way for 40 years and he's not going to stop just because a few games are telling him that it doesn't work that well anymore.
Yeah, it's true. I think he's pretty well set in what he's doing right now. I don't think it's moving at this point. Sink or swim. It's going down like this. Jonas, thank you for the $2 donation. Says, got to attack those corners. Happy Thanksgiving, guys. Well, thank you, Jonas. I think Damondre Lenore, especially, is a guy that you can get after on that other cornerback side for the
Hmm.
Niners. He's a guy not having a bad year, but there's been some times he's given up some plays out there. I've even seen Shadarius Ward, though he's having overall pretty good year, have some times as well that he does as well give up some plays from time to time and can get beat badly. And I tell you, I still maintain this, Brendan, that Ward is right behind Sauce Gardner as the most handsy cornerback in the NFL. That guy gets away with more pulling and tugging and post 5 yards contact than any other corner, in my opinion.
And he does get called for it a decent amount too. That Vikings game, I think he got hit with it a couple times. Was a big reason why they lost that game. So yeah,
Yeah. He doesn't
I
get called
get you.
first. They let him freaking molest DK. He molests DK on every game. It's like he's got half of his jersey ripped apart by the end of the game. He's
Hmm.
been grabbing him so much. And I just go, man, like, really? Like, we can't get DK, can't win one of those calls. That's way past 5 yards. And he's up there always at the top of it. Watch this game. You'll always see Jerry's always up at the top of the chest to DK, 10 yards into the route, both hands right there on his chest. It's not supposed to be allowed, but you're going to watch it tomorrow night and see it probably playing and play out when DK is trying to break free in coverage.
Right.
Happy Thanksgiving, though.
Yep.
Jonas, thank you for the
Happy
$2
Thanksgiving,
donation.
Jonas. Thank you.
Agree with you on that, man. The corners are definitely the spot defensively that you can. Secondary is where you can kind of make some hay. They're not playing bad, but it is in a defense that's very stout and strong across the board. That's the one place you can maybe kind of find some yards, find some points. Cameron, thank you for the $10 donation. Very kind of you, Cameron, for that. Thanks, brother. Says through 10 games, our record is the same as it was last season, but it feels like this team coaching staff has taken a step back. I'm losing faith in the rebuild if the coaching continues the way it is. It's a good little time to talk about faith and pulse of the fan base, Brendan.
Right.
You and I are in unique places in what we do with this because not only is it we're reading online and reading comment boards, but we have so much direct interaction with so many Hawk fans between the two of us and kind of getting a feel for trends and stuff that we're sensing in the fan base that's starting to promulgate a little bit. And I think him and me are both feeling right now in doing this for years as we've done, a sense, what's the right word to use here, Brendan, in the fan base right now? A sort of a sense of maybe a lack of faith, a sense of losing.
The word I use is boredom. I think people are just kind of bored. They're not angry or depressed or really, really sad. They're just kind of bored.
It's a good word to use to any. I think they're seeing the same application like me and Brendan are being applied across the board, offensively and defensively. And it's not that the whole process is broken. It's just that this process that they want to continue to hold on to is going to hold them back, in our opinion, in the long term. And yeah, I think you do feel like you're going backwards this year versus last year. You had 6 rookie starters across the board, 2 rookie starting tackles. You had to, get through that dead money you had last year. This year, you have a much more talented unit. You haven't had a very tough schedule up until this point. It's really hard not to see this team as regressing this year as we stand. And when you go, okay, why did they regress? Because the young guys aren't playing good enough? Or is it because we're not taking the steps forward on both sides of the ball to modernize in the way that we set out to do 2 years ago? And in my opinion, it is that stands above anything else. Not that it's the end all be all reason for any of the things that are not necessarily rolling right this year, but it does stand as, to me, the main culprit.
Yeah, I would say that there are some fans out there who are kind of disengaged from this current team. And there are a couple different reasons why they might be. And I think some people genuinely going into this season thought we were going to win the Super Bowl or get close to the Super Bowl. And the reason why they're starting to lose interest is because they're finding out that this is not a Super Bowl team. Like it's not. It's a team that is probably going to make the playoffs. It's a team that I maintain, even if we end up with 8 wins, I think we make the playoffs because that's the way the NFC is going. But it's not a Super Bowl team. And I think some people are checking out because of that. And I want to be very clear about something. That's not why I'm starting to get frustrated with this team. I did not go into this season thinking that this team was going to win the Super Bowl. And I think that if you were, you might have been getting a little ahead of yourself. This is a very young team that still has a couple steps to take in their rebuild. But at the same time, we should be getting better. We shouldn't be going backwards or staying the same compared to last year. Like, okay, last year you got ahead of the game by actually having a pretty good season, but that doesn't mean it should be okay to regress this year. And that's where it kind of looks like it's going. And more important than any of that, though, because I can take a bad season. Like if this season ends with us winning 7 games and not making the playoffs, okay. But big picture, and this is what I said last night, and I'm going to stick to it. My question is, when this roster actually gets to the point where it's good enough to win a title, which I think we are close to, give us another offseason, another good draft, maybe we need to bring in an elite type quarterback, somebody better than Geno too. But honestly, I think that we just improve the interior offensive line a bit. We're there. But the coaches that we have, are they the right coaches to steward that roster to the Super Bowl or close to it? And with what I'm seeing right now, the answer is no. And that's the problem that I'm having right now.
Yeah, I'm having the same issue. I think that there is a share of because there's always all different types when you have in the fan base, and there's certainly some of the fan base type to go, I did have high expectations for this year that aren't going to get met, and that has me bailing. I do think that there's I would even offer maybe even a bigger contingent of, especially within these hardcore fans that pay a little bit more closer attention than you might get with just a casual fan who are looking at it, and as they get into the depths of analyzing this team, walking away with some of the similar outlook that we have on it, being that it isn't just about this year now, it's about having hope that this thing can be put in the right direction when you put all that talent in the right place to be ready to go out there and hum. And that and that if you don't have that feeling they can, then it is very realistic to look at it and say that then becomes the thing that holds them back down the road, where they have all the talent in the books, but they don't have the scheme that can make it happen. And that's what starts to look like what does emerge, I think, for a lot of fans as they're seeing it this way. And I hope it doesn't go this direction, but it does start to look like this is we're 10 games into the year when we're looking at trends and the way this has gone in recent years. And if that is the way that it plays out this year, as it fits the type, Brennan, it's going to be hard for me to make, I'm sure for you to make, many excuses or explanations for why that isn't the direction we're heading, no matter the talent you add to this team. And maybe you're able to just stack the talent so good that it can overcome scheme, but it hasn't. The schemes looks in such disrepair on both sides of the ball up until this point this season that it seems like that's in itself wouldn't be enough. Even if you got like all of your draft picks correct and got another third draft with huge returns of players coming through and in their level of play on the field. Is that fair?
Yeah, I totally am on board with that. To be clear, I don't think this current Seahawks roster is Super Bowl caliber. I don't. I think it's too young and inexperienced.
Hmm.
Where a huge part of the good stuff on our roster is young. So I understand that you probably need to give them a little bit of time. I understand that. So this is not like, oh, we're not going to win the Super Bowl this year, therefore I want to fire everybody. This is show me that when that time comes, because I do believe that time is coming very soon. Like, I think next year's roster could be Super Bowl caliber. Show me that you're the right guys to take that roster to that level. And right now, I'm not really seeing it.
That's the part that's made this hard this year is that you were failing on things that were showing you trying to take those steps forward in progress. We talked about this yesterday, so I won't belabor it, but if you were failing in the spots that were things of, okay, we're trying to blitz a little bit more this year, and boy, we're giving up some big plays over the top. We got to find the balance. We got to find out how to keep that clean in that way. Or we're running the stack fronts, and teams are kind of able to take advantage of these stack fronts as we roll it. Or offensively, we're using pre and post snap motion, and sometimes it's causing things to get a little bit wild post snap because not everybody's on the same page and where they're needing to go. If you're failing going down these things and you're getting the growing pains of the scheme going through this adolescence to reach adulthood for when you're ready to then go be that contender, it'd be a lot more easy to be sympathetic with the things that fail. But the things that fail for the same old reasons, those same reasons that Coach Carroll said 2 years ago, we've got to change, we got to fix. We've been stuck in our ways. We've been holding on to the old for far too long. Well, that's where then the faith starts to get shaken just a little bit, and I think understandably so from anybody that finds himself thinking those thoughts.
Right.
Thank you, Cameron. Though appreciate you, man, and you are not alone, man. I'll say that you are definitely not alone on that. It's Hoof has been a member, I believe this is of your channel, 31 long months. Might be mine too. Either way, thank you, Hoof. I think you're a member on mine too. Says happy Thanksgiving, guys. Make sure to eat some good food. Devin Witherspoon is going to have Brock Purdy in Purdy-tory.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to believe that, but I kind of felt the same thing about what Woolen was going to be able to do last year in the playoff game, and we didn't let him do anything. We just sat in zone, and he gave up a ton of stuff. And you got what you got. So hopefully we don't do that this year, at least. That would be a step in the right direction.
I think you can definitely give Purgatory a tough time this week at Hoof, but to Brennan's point, it's going to rely on you putting these guys in coverages that allows them to go make a play. And if you're having them drop back in off coverage and the receiver is going to run an over route or a crosser or a drag, you're going to really put those corners in a predicament of putting them behind the 8 ball to recover and get back up on top of those kind of plays. If you have them play man, they can be on top of the play from the jump, from the snap, in the back pocket of the receiver. But that's a big key in this game coming into it is the willingness to do it. And again, you don't just have to guess on this one and say, well, it's what you kind of think, Brandon, that they do well. It's also what teams who have been able to topple this minor Niner unit have done this year up until this point. It's been the trek they've taken on top of being what we're advocating for.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But thank you for the 31 long months as a member. It's Hoof, and happy Thanksgiving to you. We definitely got some good food ready for me on my end. You got your food set up over there, Brendan?
Yeah, definitely. That part's definitely gonna be we're undefeated in the food category.
No one's going hungry in your household?
Yeah, that's right.
Appreciate you, Hoof. Megan Gok Roger, my lady from Denenda. Thank you for the $5 donation, Megan. It's good to see you in the chat. It says B, Zorn large in jersey tomorrow. Yes, we've got to call upon the power of the large and Zorn jerseys tomorrow for whatever luck they can bring. I don't know if even they are going to be strong enough in their tandem, Megan, to make it happen, but we've got to try, damn it. Forgot to ask you. Happy Thanksgiving to you both, and the 12s for me. Well, thank you, Megan, for the $5. Happy Thanksgiving to you. And yes, I can confirm tomorrow's will be do you have a luck jersey, Brennan? Do you have a jersey you bring out?
I'm not a jersey person. I'm
a
more
lucky
of just a
shirt?
shirt person. Yeah, my throwback shirt's been working out pretty well.
Is it a throwback shirt day tomorrow, or are you going, well, this I can't waste it on this one because the odds are too long as it is?
I'll bust it out. I'll bust it out. Like, honestly, I mean, not that I'm betting on this being the thing that saves us, but it would be pretty on brand for Carroll to lose that Rams game and then beat this Niners team. Like,
Yeah, it would.
it would be.
It's just the
And
universe would make sense by yeah.
over Carroll's tenure, this team has done a fairly good job of answering the bell when it's everybody's kind of counting them out. Not always, but a decent amount of the time. I
True.
can give him credit for that.
It's very true. It's very true. I don't think that it's just us for certain that we lose this game. It's just the odds look long, but it is definitely not. We're at home. It's a night primetime game. Everybody's going to be up for it. So, anything can happen. And especially it's an NFC matchup. These interdivision matchups always tend to get a little bit kinked up a bit and tend to be a little bit toughly fought and can come down to sometimes an odd bounce of the ball in order to who wins it. But folks, I hope you guys know now, Brendan, me, got Megan out there, any of you folks out there that are having a luck jersey, we need you to bring that into play tomorrow. Let's get this in unison. Let's create some synergy with this thing. Our team needs it. Our team needs all the help they can get tomorrow against this tough Niners squad. So, Megan has also become a new member of the channel. I don't know if it's me or you, or she's just re-upping on one of those, but thank you, Megan, for becoming a member again, back up on the channel. As I know you already were, so it probably just sometimes it gets weird with that, where it will expire.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we've I think we've kind of looked here at what we want to see this team do offensively. If I'm not mistaken from you, we're kind of looking at tight ends, lean into that. Running game, stay balanced in this game. Do we shoot for a 50-50 kind of run rate that you would not normally look to get, or at least as close to that as you can ideally? I mean, you're not going to get there, but as kind of close as you can ideally get.
I can't imagine that's a realistic possibility when you've lost K9 and you're replacing him partially with McIntosh. And McIntosh is a guy who's going to thrive when you get him the ball through the air. Like he's not even like a Charbonnet, where Charbonnet catches a lot of like safety valve, security blanket type throws.
Outlet
He's a guy
throws.
who actually runs receiver routes, and he's
Yeah.
good at it too. Like that's what makes McIntosh interesting. Like this is different from most other running backs in the league. So I can't imagine us getting to a 50-50 or anywhere close to that, especially because I do think the Niners are going to put up some points and you're going to have to keep scoring yourself to keep up.
Yeah, that's a good point. You may need to absolutely facilitate the points just by the nature of how their offense rolls with it. Certainly was the case in the playoff game last year at the end. So good point there with that. And McIntosh definitely was an unusual back in this last draft. It was him and Jahmyr Gibbs that were the two that you could really feel comfortable in looking at the tape on those guys when you align them out like a wide receiver in their ability to run routes and look like receivers running routes, not like a running back trying to run routes. So it'll be interesting to see how they try to utilize that in this game and work that in a little bit here. Or if they try to manufacture some touches from that kind of look, moving in motion from the slot or something like that. Be interesting to see what they do there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's get a final score on this one, Brendan. Let's give them the final where we think this one's going. We haven't painted the brightest of pictures so far, but we're just being realists with it. So, how does this one play out on Thanksgiving with all of the eyes of the nation upon us?
I'll go 27-17 Niners. I don't think we're going to get killed because we're at home. I do think there is some sense of like pride in play because we lost that Rams game, but I don't think we got the horses.
Yeah, I think my score is going to be pretty close. I think that it's going to be a game that's played out kind of probably to the type of the games that we've seen this year so far, being that we stand pretty well step for step with them through the first half. We get about halfway into the third quarter and the gas starts to run out of the engine and they start to distance themselves just a little bit. Maybe we make a little bit of a flurry at the end to try to bring it back close, but I think it's still going to be a 24-13 game. In my opinion, we get a touchdown, 2 field goals. But I think that right now with where we're playing, where the Niners are playing and just still are yet, we still haven't found an identity, Brendan. I mean, do you have any identity on this team? I mean, we knew what the LOB team would be. Beyond being a great team, you knew what their identity was. They're going to run, they're going to hit, they're going to run the ball, they're going to be physical. We knew what that was. We don't really have an identity on this team on either side of the ball as of yet, 10 games into the season, do we?
No, no, we don't. You're right. Yeah, when you put it like that, that's really depressing. Even some of these bad teams, it seems like some of these bad teams out there have an identity, right? Like,
Yeah. It's something I've been just sort of get turned over my head recently going, man, what do we do? I mean, we do a lot of different things, but what do we do good consistently in any manner of anything? I mean, even the run that we did start out so well in stopping on the defensive side of the ball is kind of pittered out, especially from an efficiency standpoint the past few weeks. So it's hard when you don't have an identity going against this Niner team whose identity is so ingrained. They know what they are. They know how they're going to go win games, and they're going to go out there and execute it. But we got a chance here, Brendan. We're one game away from coming out of this game tomorrow and being in first place if we win it. And if that happens, I'm not going to say this is all fixed and correct. I'm not going to slip on a dime. You're not going to flip on a dime. The issues we're talking about play have been here for 10 games. They're not this just showed up last week. These are things that are long going issues in some respects goes beyond just this year, Brendan. So I do hope we can get this win, man. I do want to see it, but it's going to be a hard get in this one, man. This is going to be a tough one.
Yeah, again, this Seahawks team has answered the bell in the past. In a lot of these games where people are counting them out, or people are looking at like their remaining schedule and saying, "Oh, this team's in trouble," they've usually responded well. But I don't know if that's a guarantee of future success.
Do you think of this being the fourth matchup that we played them now in about a year and a half? Do you think this is the best matchup? We've got the best opportunity to go out there and beat them in. That this is the one you can go and say that we. I'm not saying we should win it, but just that those are the ones you're going on the road after. Remember after they had the embarrassing game against Chicago, you're going to San Fran. That's going to be a tough one. Purdy coming into your house, maybe that was the one where we would have felt a little more confident with Purdy coming in and still is kind of an untested guy, I guess, because you now know him as kind of a known quantity thing.
I don't think so. I mean, Carroll and Hurt have both said this week, we feel like we match up better with the Niners this year than we did last year. So they're kind of putting it out there. So if we don't see some results that indicate that tomorrow, then I mean, well, they were wrong. They were wrong. They were very, very wrong.
Yeah. Amen on that. And we've been kind of saying that a little bit recently at times too often. But hey, let's see how this goes. We got Radu Turkin getting us finished off right here with a nice $5 donation. Thank you, Radu. Says 37-20 Hawks. I see our offense clicking this game. Is Lucas back?
They listed him as questionable, but they said he's not going to play, which makes you wonder why they listed him as questionable, but whatever.
Yeah, maybe they're trying to surprise him with like, surprise, Luke is out here now. Yeah, it looks like they're still waiting on him. They've been very careful with him, and we're going to have to see where that knee is into the future, if this is a problem or not, and maybe another position we end up having to address is right tackle in the future if this is going to be a big major issue. But Radu, I love your confidence, man. I 100% hope you're right. I would be loving watching on Thanksgiving a 37-20 game and making everybody try to figure out what the hell are these Seahawks? What is a Seahawk? Who is a Seahawk? Nobody be knowing. They're like, are they bad? Are they great? The national media would be all over the place on that one, Brendan. Did the Niners just not show up? But nonetheless, I would love to see it, and that'd be a great gift, Radu, for the hometown crowd on Thanksgiving to be able to catch that kind of game, especially with some of the brutal contests we've had in recent weeks at times here. So I'd love to see it, Radu, and I thank you, man, for all your donations and support to the chat. You're awesome, brother. Awesome.
Yep. Thank you, Radu.
Well, we will go ahead and kind of put a button on this on that note. Me and Brendan will be back on Tuesday next week to do the post-game wrap-up at that point. So we will chop that up. It'll be a little bit after this game's kind of lasted, Brendan, but we'll still have some time. Maybe we'll do a little, I don't know. We'll shoot for that lightly, and maybe we'll change it a little bit earlier on. I don't know. So I think everybody will be beyond this game by that point. But thank you guys for watching tonight. Do me a favor, please hit that like button if you could. Of course, do get over to Seahawks Brendan Nelson's channel and sub up in my channel as well if you're not already. That'd be great of you guys to do. I know that we haven't exactly painted the brightest of portraits tonight. I know that some of you guys may feel like we're really down on the team. We're not out on the team. We're just a little down on some things that we just want to see get corrected. The good news is on this, Brendan, really though, this isn't to me a talent issue. I hear what you're saying about the youth of the team, and it does need that growth and all of that. But this does come down to, as far as, maybe a positive note on this. These are correctable things, in my opinion. So much of what ails this team is fixable, but it requires the team to acknowledge that it needs to be fixed. And that's the part that we're just not sure of if they've yet really arrived to that stage yet in that part of the process.
Yeah, right now, I mean, we're kind of at a little bit of a low moment, but we're always 1 or 2 games away from feeling much better about things. It's always on the table. It's always possible.
Yep, absolutely. And NFL is a season of momentum and swings and changes and ebbs and flows. And there's still a lot of this year to go. And this is the 4-game stretch, Brendan, that we said this is going to time. This will determine at the end of the day who we are. We can have everything happen before and everything happen afterwards, but really you'll learn and know what your team is by the end of this 4-game stretch, truly. Without excuses, without, well, but this, but that. Nope, this is where we land and where we're at. And they could go out there and shock us and play some really good football. You never know. Wouldn't that be great to see? Thank you, Brendan, for hanging on in here through the stream today, man. I appreciate you and doing this throughout the years we've been able to do. We will be back over there on Tuesday on his side of it. Hawk fans, I want you having hope out there. I want us wearing our lucky jerseys. Brendan agreed to wear his. I'm wearing mine. If you got a lucky jersey, bring that sucker out for tomorrow. Your team is going to need it. And if you are in that stadium, use your voice to the full throat. Let that team know you are there to help. Help that team out in every way you can. They need it tomorrow. They need some momentum. They need some help from us. They need a little bit of a kick in the butt, if you will, from this fan base in that respect of things, in a positive way, a positive kick in the butt, Brendan, not a negative one, So
Yeah.
Let's get that positive.
The negative one can come in the off season.
That's right. That's for later days. Right now, we're still trying to see if we can get this ship back up onto the top of the ocean here instead of taking on water like it is right now a little bit. We'll be back in about a week here or a couple days to do a breakdown on this game and see how this thing goes. But until that time, especially coming up to a very important matchup, maybe one of the most important matchups of the year, I would hope I wouldn't have to remind my fellow Seahawks faithfuls to be on their P's and Q's and not to forget. But there might be a few of you who do nonetheless anyway. So let me remind you, let Brendan remind you, don't you ever forget. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.